I always knew I was beautiful. From as early as I can remember, the first thing anyone would remark, even before asking for my name, would be Imarama or some other variation of praise for my beauty. Who knew this was where I'd end up later? But before this, let me tell you how all this started. I was born golden skinned with long black hair as I grew older. It was usual for me it was usual to me for men to trip over themselves whenever they saw me walk by. I was used to the catcalls and leery gazes from men. My parents tried to drum into my head that good grades, good behavior, good homekeeping, and humility were much more important, but I knew I'd have it easier in life because of my beauty. I ignored all such advice. How I wish I paid much attention to it. I was the third child of my parents. We were four in number. The eldest was a boy, followed by a girl, and the one after me was also a girl. My parents weren't too well off, but we were comfortable by any other means. They owned a wholesale provision shop. I was never satisfied. There was always a hunger and hollowness in me for the finer things of life. This was fueled by the men who wanted to have a chance with me, telling me I deserved much more than I got. My older sister isn't as pretty as I nor my younger sister. It felt like she resented me for being pretty, and I resented her for not being as pretty as I am. Hence, our relationship as sisters was strained. My brother worked as an apprentice at a mechanic shop whenever he got the chance to help supplement the family's income. My sisters and I worked in my parents' shop whenever we got back from school. I hated it. I wanted to be as free as the other girls in our town who went out and had fun. I felt like I was restricted, and I began to hate our lifestyle and way of living. My problems all started when someone walked into our store. I stood in a corner as the guy was introduced as Jay. He was the son of our biggest customers. This was my first time seeing him. He had come with who normally came to the shop to get his parents' order. Luckily, or should I say unluckily, I was the one standing behind the counter that day. The first thing I noticed was how he looked very close to my own 17 years of age. As my father walked the person who came with him into the inner storeroom, my eyes connected with his, and I literally felt my heart stop beating. That was the very moment that I finally understood my mother's constant admonition for me to never lose my head over any boy. Because standing before the tall, lean, and honey-colored teenager, I knew I had already lost my head. "Do you work here?" he asked, making me jump. Only during the holidays I managed to answer, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked like the younger version of RMD. The more I looked at him, the more I felt myself turn into butter. "It's my dad's shop." He nodded in acknowledgement, but didn't look particularly surprised by that piece of information. "You already know my name, but you haven't told me yours," he said, walking towards me with a smile on his face. I had to stifle a smile as I saw the same admiration in his eyes that almost all members of the male species had around me, and I was never more pleased about the effects I had on men as I was that day. I tried to act coy to pique his interest. It was obvious he was levels ahead of all the boys in our town. "What makes you think I know your name?" I replied. I assumed you would have already heard of me, considering my parents are your biggest customers, he said to me. I'm sorry, but I haven't heard of you. Maybe you're not as important as you think you are, I said. At that moment, my dad came out of the inner store with our shop assistants bearing their goods. Let us be going before they think I've sold you in the marketplace, said Clemens, the person who walked into the store with Jay. Did you count every? Jay began to ask, squaring up before his father's staff, his voice notably deeper. Clemens let out an irritated hiss. Is it now that you'll be asking me questions? If you wanted to know, before come inside the store, come count with me now. Let us go, Joe. If you want to cross-check, feel free. Biko, Mazi, we have left. Greet your wife for me. And just like that, he was whisked away. I stood outside as their truck pulled out of the busy street, regretting why I answered him in the way I did, and wished I had just told him my name. I almost felt like running after it to have a few more minutes, just a few more minutes, talking with him. Instead, I stood there, rooted to the spot, watching until their car turned onto the major highway and disappeared. How could God have sent someone like that my way, only to take him away so quickly? I knew better than to ask my father any questions about when they would probably return to restock, so I kept my mouth shut and silently helped him balance his books. My father was on cloud 9 because the purchase they made was enough for a whole month's worth of sales. In the coming days, the euphoria from talking to him was on an all-time high. Even my older sister's rude remarks couldn't bring me from that high. Those men who I normally talk to, whenever they stopped me to give me compliments, I completely ignored them. I compared them to Jay and felt they didn't deserve a second of my time. Days passed and he didn't come by to the shop, even when it was time for them to pick up their delivery. I was worried that the way I spoke to him drove him off. I forgot all about him and continued to encourage the advances of the men in my town. It was on a slow market day, and I had been sitting on a stool, idly chewing gum and picking at my fingernails, when he suddenly appeared at the door. I was so shocked that I almost fell off my stool. Outwardly though, my face remained stoic and expressionless. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing the effect he was having on me. "Hi, beautiful," he said, leaning over the counter, so close I could feel his breath on my skin. I felt my face flush. "Hi, hello," I stammered back. "I didn't think you guys would be back to restock so soon." He smiled, and the sight of his immaculate, snow-white teeth made me feel lightheaded. Thank God I was sitting. He was truly the most handsome human being I had ever laid eyes on. "No, I'm here to see you." I looked at him, shocked. "Me? He came all the way just to see me." I was shocked, thinking he had forgotten all about me. "It's just a 30-minute drive. I didn't have to take the night bus or anything," he chuckled, prompting a smile from me. "You've been on my mind ever since the last time I was here, and I just had to see you again. And you never did tell me your name," he said, leaning closer. Deep in my heart, I knew this line of conversation was wrong, very wrong. I knew this was the kind of thing that could lead to my ruin, but the allure, the pull, was the strongest I had ever experienced, and for the first time, that hunger and hollowness in me was filled. "Are you busy? Is your father around? Can I take you out for a quick drink?" he asked, leaning even closer. "Don't worry, I'll bring you back in no time." That was when I noticed the shiny black Toyota Celica parked outside and realized he had driven it there. This only made the temptation so much stronger. No, and I hesitated in answering the third question. My father had gone to his wholesaler, and I knew that I wouldn't be missed too much if I just went out for a little while. Fine, but I have to be back soon, I finally said, with a quick glance at Ebube, who was fast asleep on a bench by the doorway. The other attendant, Ebenezer, had gone in search of lunch. He smiled like he'd won the jackpot, and when he took my hand to lead me to his car, it sent shockwaves through my whole body. Getting into the flashy sports car, I hated that I was again underdressed. I wish I'd had the opportunity to prepare properly, to make an even bigger impression than I already had. Is there anywhere in particular you want to go? I don't know this town that well, Jay said. I merely shrugged in response, trying to feign indifference, when in reality, my insecurity was eating me alive. Rather than be discouraged, he smiled and drove all the way to the GRA, to a bar nestled in a small boutique hotel. I didn't utter a word of complaint as the drive took us to the other end of town, because even I wanted to be far away from the gossips in my neighborhood. Dealing with them would be a lot harder to handle than getting back a bit late. Taking a seat beside him, I made sure to sit with my legs crossed and my back ramrod straight to make it seem like I belonged. My God, you are beautiful, Jay remarked as we waited for our drinks. I was worried that I had exaggerated your beauty in my mind and that you wouldn't be able to live up to it if I saw you again. But gosh, you are even more beautiful than I remember. I'm sure you hear this every day. A part of me wanted to tell him that truly I had been hearing it all my life. But another part of me wanted this to feel special and like something that was new to us both. No, I answered, shaking my head. Nobody has ever told me that. I like you. I really like you, he said, taking my hand in his. I want us to be special friends. Special friends, I echoed, not quite understanding him. I want you to be my girlfriend, he answered. I want to marry you. I was caught up in the moment, but not enough to hear the fury in his words. Marry me? Is that how they married? I laughed at him. You're just a teenager. Besides, we hardly even know each other. You don't even know what my name is. I can court you, and I'm not a teenager. I'm 20 years old, and I look younger than my age. This was his emphatic answer. We aren't too young to court. My late mother was probably about a year or two older than you are now when she married my father, he continued to say. My resolve was weakening as he kept talking. I have to go, I said. It's getting late. My father will soon start looking for me. He nodded in understanding. I'll be back to see you in a few days, then we can talk more. We walked back to the car, and just as I was about to get in, he pulled me into his arms and kissed me. It was completely unexpected, but I guess on a deeper level, my heart had been longing for it. As innocent as I was, I knew what a passionate kiss was meant to be like. I better take you back before we do something we shouldn't, he groaned in my ear. I don't know how you've done it, but I'm completely crazy about you. You're like a drug to me. I wanted to tell him I felt the same and that being in his arms was making me doubt, question, and recalibrate my entire moral compass. I was ashamed to admit to myself that if he had wanted to take things further with me, I might not have been strong enough to refuse, but I knew I would be better off not appearing so easy. One step after the other, I said, disengaging from him and entering the car. Let's get to know each other first. The ride back to the shop felt shorter, and we made plans to see each other the following week. When we pulled up in the front of the shop, he looked at me with longing. Can I kiss you again? Much as I wanted to say yes, I knew that there was a high chance of being caught by one of the other traders in the vicinity, and the last thing my family needed was a scandal. So instead, I'd squeezed his knee. Not right now, when you come back. I waited for weeks for him to come. I was obsessed with the idea of him. He occupied my every waking thought. It seemed the more weeks he spent away, the more my obsession grew. It was confusing to me because men would chase me. I didn't go chasing after other men. Now that I think about it, he knew exactly what he was doing. He finally showed up in the same car in front of the shop. At this point, I was ready to do whatever he asked of me. I hopped into the car with no pleasantries, and we drove straight to a hotel outside the town. I was in a state of bliss after the coupling. He whispered sweet nothings into my ear, telling me I was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen, and made promises to marry me. We continued our tryst after that. It didn't matter what time of the day. I'd make every opportunity to be alone with him. It didn't matter if I was in class or at home. As a result, my grades began to suffer. I wasn't as smart as my older sister, but I was doing well enough. The school brought this to the attention of my parents, informing them that my grades were falling and I was skipping school. My parents were so angry and forbade me from seeing Jay. I refused to listen to their warnings and told them, I'm in love with him and he's in love with me too. He's rich enough to take care of me even if I don't finish secondary school, I insisted. The same man who wants to kill himself because of your face is the same man who will throw you away when your breasts fall down, my mom said to me in anger. My father didn't say anything after this, just shook his head and sighed like he knew exactly what was going to happen. I felt that since my parents already knew what was happening, there was no need for me to sneak out or go to school. I basically began to spend all my time with him in an apartment he had rented for our escapades. I was so happy. I felt like everything was finally going the way I wanted, till it stopped. I'm sure you can guess what happened. Yep, I became pregnant for him. I was so happy thinking this would hasten him to get married to me. I went with excitement to inform him of the news. I was in for a rude awakening. I told him the news and he was surprised at first and told me to get rid of the baby. I told him I didn't want to. He tried coaxing me by saying, do you want all our fun to stop? Bringing a baby will spoil our love. I remained adamant and maintained I wanted to keep the pregnancy. His whole expression changed and he became disgusted with me. He started insulting me and calling me all sorts of names. He called me a bush girl who just wanted to tie him down with a pregnancy, and that he was sure the baby wasn't even his because he claimed I was very eager to spread my legs to whomever showed me attention. He shouted at me to leave the place, but I pleaded with him to let me stay, that I couldn't return back to my parents with this condition. He let me stay, but he began to torment me. I watched for weeks how he would bring other women to the apartment and have sex with them right there in my face. Sometimes, he would tell me to leave the apartment altogether and wait outside till he's done. I couldn't bear it much longer. I returned home with my head down in shame.